Greetings of the day to all my dear students. I hope that you all are in good health. For today's video lecture, we shall start with a very short story. The title for the story is Desire for Success. A young man asked Socrates the secret to success. Socrates asked the young man to walk with him in the river. When the water got up to their neck, Socrates took the young man by surprise and ducked him into the water. The boy struggled to get out. When after some time Socrates pulled his head out of the water, the first thing the young man did was to gasp and take a deep breath of air. Socrates asked, "What did you want the most when you were there?" The boy replied, "Air." Socrates said, "That is the secret to success. When you want success as badly as you wanted the air, then you will get it. There is no other secret." This is Shreya Jadhav welcoming you all to my e-learning channel, and today we are going to learn English grade 9 chapter 7 Pecking, written by Jeremy K. Jeremy. This is part 2 of chapter 7. So before starting with the reading and explanation of the remaining part of the chapter, let us know something about the author. Jeremy K. Jeremy was born on May 2, 1859 in Caldmore, Walsall, England. He obtained his school education at St. Marylebone Grammar School. He was English writer and humorist. He is best known for the comic travelogue Three Men in a Boat. Apart from this, he wrote some essay collection, Idle Thoughts of Idle Fellow, Second Thoughts of an Idle Fellow, Three Men of Bimmel, and some other novels. He breathed his last breath on June 14, 1927. Jeremy's father died when he was only 13, and his mother died when he was 15. He was brought up in a poverty in London. Jeremy wished to enter politics or be a man of letters, but the death of his parents forced him to quit his studies and find work to support himself. Introduction for answer. Whenever you are appearing for exams or tests, always keep in mind to start your answer with introduction. This creates a good impact. Prose name Pecking. Author's name Jeremy K. Jeremy. Genre short story. Summary. In the story, the author tells us that before starting any journey, we should plan and prepare well for it. Otherwise, we have to face a lot of difficulties. So, we'll start from the 8th paragraph. They begin in a light-hearted spirit, evidently intended to show me how to do it. I made no comment. I only waited with the expectation of George Harris is the worst packer in this world. And I looked at the piles of plates and cups and kittles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes and tomatoes, etc., and felt that the things would soon become exciting. It did. It started with breaking a cup. That was first thing they did. They did that just to show you what they could do and to get you interested. Then Harris packed the strawberry jam on the top of a tomato and squashed it, and they had to pick out the tomato with teaspoons. So, in the previous lecture, we have gone through that how Jeremy, the writer, was very bad at packing, and he always used to forget his things. He was not at all confident with his packing, whether he was well equipped with it or not. He always would forget some things inside, or the things which he needed, he would pack it up and then again he was supposed to remove it. Now it was turn of the other two people whose name was George and Harris, and now it was their turn to pack the things, and they were even worse than the author himself. And at that time duration, the author is telling that Harris is the worst packer in the world, that they didn't had any sort of planning and management, because everything was smashed and they didn't keep everything in a proper order. That the strawberry jam was on the top of tomato and it was squashed, and they had to pick up those squashed tomatoes with teaspoon, and they were supposed to clean it. And then it was George's turn, and he trod on the butter. I didn't say anything, but I came over and sat on the edge of the table and watched him. So now it was that you can see over here the image is given to you, that how George had just stepped on the butter and then everything was spread all over. It irritated them more than anything I could have said. I felt that. It made them nervous and excited, and they stepped on things and put things behind them, and then couldn't find them when they wanted them. And they packed their pies at the bottom and put heavy things on top and smashed the pies in. So now eventually what happened, that everything was so much messed up that eventually all the things which were easily broken, or we can say no easily stepped into, were put at the bottom, and the heavy things were packed at the top of the basket, and everything was ruined. They were supposed to leave the home very soon. They upset salt over everything. And as for the butter, I never saw two men do more with 1 and 2 pence worth of butter in my whole life. Then they did it. After George had got it off his sleeper, they tried to put it in the kittle. It wouldn't go in, and what was in wouldn't come out. They did scrap it and out at last and put it down on a chair, and Harris sat on it, and it struck to him, and they went looking for it all over the room. So eventually, removing the butter from his sleeper, they tried to put that butter into the kittle. But then it was very difficult for them to remove things out from the kittle. When they removed it, they put the thing into the, means they put the butter down on the chair, and Harris sat on the butter and it was stuck behind him. And then both of them were roaming around in the whole room and searching for the butter. I'll take my oath I put it down on that chair, said George, staring at the empty seat. I saw you did it myself. Not a minute ago, said Harris. Then they started around the room, again looking for it, and then they met again in the center and stared at one another. Most extraordinary thing I have ever heard, said George. So mysterious, said Harris. Then George got round at the back of Harris and saw it. And then eventually what happened? George said that he promised that he had kept the butter down on that chair. And Harris also accepted that yes, it was there 1 minute ago, that he also had seen that the butter was there, but now it was not there. So they were, we can say, no, they were in a shock, they were in a delusion that what happened. They again started the search in their room, and they again met up in center at the center, and they said that what an extraordinary thing, it is so mysterious, no, that the butter has been lost. But they were not aware that it was behind the back of the person called Harris. The author was knowing everything, but he didn't say anything, and they were busy in themselves. Then George got around at the back of Harris and saw it. Why, here it is all the time, he explained indigently. Where? Cried Harris, spinning around. Stand still, can't you? Roared George, flying after him. And they got it off and pecked it in the teapot. So eventually, what happened? That George came to know that it was near them, and means he told that no, we were searching for him all the time, but it was very difficult for it to find. Why? Because it was at the back of Harris, and then they found out, and then they pecked it in the teapot. Montmorency was in all, of course, Montmorency's ambition in life is to get in a way to be sworn it. If he can scream it anywhere where he particularly is not wanted, and be a perfect nuisance and make people mad, and have things thrown at his head, then he feels his day has not been wasted. To get somebody to stumble over him and curse him steadily for an hour is his highest aim and object, and when he has succeeded in accomplishing this, his conceit becomes quite unbearable. So now what happened? One more additional to the problems which they were facing. So over here we have Montmorency, who is the dog, and he harasses all three of them. He picks out the things from the basket, or whatever is wanted, he comes and sit on it, and no, he always used to get some sort of beatings. Yes, because he always used to harass them a lot. He came and sat down on things just when they were wanted to be packed, and he labored under the fixed belief that whenever Harris or George reached out their hands for anything, it was his cold, damp nose that they wanted. He put his leg into the jam, and he worried the teaspoons, and he pretended that the lemons were rats, and got into the hamper and killed. So now what was the characteristics of this dog? That he would come and sit down on the things, he whatever is supposed to be packed, he wanted all those things, and he believed that whatever Harris and George wanted, when they would pull out their hand to get and reach for the things, at that time they would always get was the dog's nose only. And he put down his leg into the jam and worried about the teaspoons, and he also pretended that lemons were like rats, and they got into the hamper where all the things were put, and killed three of them before Harris could lend him with the frying pan. That after that, always he used to harass them a lot. Harris said I encouraged him. I didn't encourage him. A dog like that doesn't want any encouragement. It's the natural, original scene that is born in him that makes him do things like that. The packing was done at 12:50 and Harris sat on a big hamper and said he hoped nothing would be found broken. George said if anything was broken, it was broken, which reflection seemed to comfort him. He also said that he was ready for bed. We were all ready for bed. Harris was to sleep with us that night, and we went upstairs. So, eventually, what happened? Harris told the author that the author was the person who always used to encourage the dog. But at that time, the author is saying that this type of dogs never want any sort of encouragement. It is very natural to them, and they were born like this only to do these sort of stuff in their life. So the packing was done by 12:50 and Harris and they all sat on the big hamper. They hoped that nothing was found broken inside it. Moreover to that, George said very bluntly, if something is broken, it is broken. And he seemed that he was very comfortable with that thing. And they said that now it was time for them to go to bed because they were supposed to wake up early. And at that time duration, Harris was also going to sleep with them that particular night. So every one of them went upstairs. We tossed for beds and Harris had to sleep with me. He said, do you prefer the inside or outside, Jay? I said I generally prefer to sleep inside a bed. Harry said it was odd. George said, what time shall I wake you fellows? Harry said, 7. I said, no, 6, because I wanted to write some letters. So now eventually they went upstairs to their bedroom and they also tossed for beds that who is supposed to sleep where. And at that time it was Harris who would sleep with the author. And they were discussing that on which part of the bed would you like to sleep. And at that time the author said inside part of the bed. At that time Harris told that that was a very odd thing that you like to sit inside. And at that time George said that by what time you all want to wake up. And Harris said 7, but the author told 6 because he wanted to write some of the letters. Harris and I had a bit of raw over it, but at last split the difference and said 6:30. Wake us at 6:30, George, we said. So now again, the Harris and the author, both of them started quarreling with each other, fighting and arguing with each other that what is the favorable time for both. And at the end they ended up saying that it was will be choosing a midway, that is 6:30 would be a convenient time. And they decided that they would wake up at 6:30. George made no answer, and we found on going over that he had been asleep for some times. So we placed the bath where we could tumble into it over getting out in the morning and went to bed ourselves. So eventually at the end what happened, that they have decided, but by that time duration George was already asleep. And then they decided that okay, they would get up in the morning by themselves, and then both of them went to bed. So this is all about the chapter, the reading of it. We'll have a short quick summary of the chapter and then we shall complete. So in the story Packing, the author Jeremy K. Jeremy tells us that before starting any journey, we should plan and prepare well for it. Otherwise, we have to face a lot of difficulties. We should not take any task very easy or leave it on others. Our life is also a journey, and we met with very complex situation many times while continuing our journey. But if we have pros to deal with them, we do not have to experience too much pain. Through the story, the author tells us that the things that seems to be very easy may not be as easy as we think. Packing things in a bag is not a difficult task, but it made a mess because it was not done in proper plan. There were three friends, George, Harris, and Jeremy, who is the narrator, and they decided to go on a holiday. Jeremy was very proud of his packing, so he offered to do the task of packing the bags. The narrator hated other people relaxing while he was working. Harris asked the narrator that whether he had put the boots in the package. He opened the bag and packed the boots into the bag. When he was going to close his bag, a horrible idea came to his mind. If he had packed his toothbrush, he turned everything. He found toothbrushes of George and Harris more than 18 times but could not find out his toothbrush. He put the things back one by one and then he found it was inside a boot and packed the things once more. The bag finally got finished at 10:05 p.m. Now the task of packing hampers was taken by George and Harris, on which narrator agreed. Both started packing in a cheerful nature, showing narrator how to do. However, according to the writer, Harris was the worst packer in the world. They broke a cup, they made a mess. Harris packed the strawberry jam on the top of a tomato and squished it. George stepped on the butter. They packed the peas at the bottom and squashed them by putting heavy things over them. They upset everything. George got the butter off his sleeper and tried to put it in the kitli, but it wouldn't go in, and what was in wouldn't come out. At last, they dragged it out all and put it down the chair. Harry sat on it, and butter stuck to him. They searched the whole room, but couldn't able to find. Lastly, George got round at the back of Harris and saw it, and they got it off and packed it in the teapot. Thus, they made a mess. Their pet dog also disturbed them a lot. He came and sat on the things just when they were wanted to be packed. He put his leg into the jam and he pretended that the lemons were rats and got into the hamper and killed three of them before Harris could land him with the frying pan. Harris said it was the narrator who encouraged the dog for these things. Finally, the packing was done at 12:50. They decided to go to sleep. George asked when he should wake them. After a little argument, they decided that they would wake up at 6:30. So, this is all about the summary of the chapter. I hope that all of you have understood the chapter precisely. This is really very easy to remember. Always keep in mind to remember the main points of the stories so that it would be very helpful to you to frame the answers also. Now, which are those main points? That is the three friends' name, that is George, Harris, Jeremy. What did they do? They decided to take a journey. Who took the task of packing things into a bag? That is Jeremy, the narrator, took the task. When the author was packing things, what other two were doing? George and Harris were relaxing while the author was working. And author didn't like this thing. He was very irritated. The narrator had to open the bag once again because he had forgotten to put things. Again, he was supposed to open. Why? Because he was in search of his toothbrush, which he had packed inside his boot. And then he assigned the task of packing hampers, that is, baskets, to George and Harris. They made a mess while packing the things. So, what the first thing they do? They broke the cup. And Harris packed the strawberry jam on the top of tomatoes and squashed it, and George stepped on the butter. They also had a dog and who always used to not disturb all three of them. They went to bed at 12:15. George asked them when he would wake up. After a little time of arguments, they decided to wake up at 6:30. So this is all about the chapter. I hope that every one of you have understood it. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. If you still find any doubt or queries, you can comment down in a comment section below. Have a great day, everyone.